the White House is trying to incentivize Americans to have more babies. We have a population crisis here. And so they're looking for ways to say, hey, how can we get people to have more kids? Well, I have to ask this question. What would actually happen if parents were exempt from paying income tax? As we said, the White House is currently trying to figure out how to convince Americans to have more kids, so I figured we'd throw this into the ring. What happens if we run the math on government tax revenue for an individual with no kids and an individual with 3 kids but does not pay state or federal income tax? First things first, let's establish revenue for the government as a whole, meaning the federal government, the state, the local, all just government. If someone with 3 kids is exempt from paying income tax but still has to pay consumption tax, Social Security, Medicaid, property tax, etc., in terms of government revenue, how does that stack up with a person who does have to pay income tax but doesn't have any kids? Let's look first at the childless individual. Now, we're not going to adjust for inflation here because it would affect both sides and effectively cancel out. So let's just assume an average $50,000 a year for a childless adult. Each year, they would fork over about $12,000 in taxes, $4,000 in federal income tax, about $3,800 in payroll tax, $2,500 in state income tax. Obviously, that varies. And roughly $1,700 in sales tax. Over a 40-year working career, including minimal taxes in retirement, that's a total lifetime tax bill of a little over $500,000. Now let's take the parent of 3 kids with the exact same assumptions minus income tax. Over 40 years, that's about $250,000 for that parent alone, which is about half of the childless adult paying in income tax. However, here's the thing that people miss. That parent has 3 kids. And if we assume that those 3 kids don't have any kids whatsoever, which I think is unlikely, the tax revenue generated for the entire family during the course of that parent's life who does not pay income tax is well over $1 million and is twice or possibly even triple the tax revenue of the single adult. And that doesn't account for just 3 kids on their own. For the record, if they have those 3 kids have kids, well, it just generates more and more revenue for the government. The bottom line is, we have a population collapse problem and we need Americans to have more babies. And if the White House is looking to incentivize Americans to have more babies, exempting parents from income tax not only will generate more money at a lower rate, but could incentivize people to have more kids. Here to comment about on that and so much more is Chrissy Clark, host of the Underreported Stories podcast, and actor and Fox contributor Siaka Massaquoi. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate having you. Chrissy, I want to start with you here. I don't want to break any news, but as a person who possibly could be looking to start a family in the future, what does this, option look like to you?
Yeah, I think there's another option spelled out in the Trump plans from a New York Times article saying that there could possibly be $5,000 bonuses as well. And I'm like, hey, sure, I'll take $5,000. But at the end of the day, I was really thinking through all of this. This is not just about, a little bit of cash up front for this. I was genuinely wondering how the Trump administration plans on initiating this. And then kind of getting a little serious and was like, wait, aren't there going to be a ton of discrimination lawsuits? Because down the hall from me is the lesbian couple. And if I'm getting $5,000 for a baby, is the lesbian couple down the hall getting $5,000 for their IVF baby? Like, where is this going to go? I'm just sitting there holding tight, being like, guys, I'm super on board with trying to get population up, trying to have more babies, creating a culture of family. I'm all on board. But listening to some of these plans, I'm like, grabbing my seat, kind of ready for the roller coaster ride of inevitable court battles from something like this.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. It would be very complicated, and there's lots of caveats and variables. But what I would hope is that, hey, we've eliminated income tax for families and people with kids, and then the people that get super upset fight to not get our income tax back, but instead take their income tax away too. So we just eliminate income tax altogether. And if this is the way we do it, maybe that's the way it works. Siaka, as a parent, you honestly would probably end up paying more with your whole family if you don't pay income tax as a whole right now. What are your thoughts? Would that help you out? How do you feel?
I love the idea, but I think Christy's right. Like, we got to be careful because this is the first time in history right now that not counting adoption, but people can pay someone to get pregnant for them, and then they can take the baby, and the baby is not genetically connected to anyone, which is kind of a weird place. And you imagine just how people would use that to get paid off. But this does remind me of what Public Square is doing. Is that anyone? I think it would be cool if they incentivize jobs. So like anyone in Public Square who's working and they have a kid, they get that $5,000 bonus for them. But just you know what, let's just get rid of income tax. Tax is theft anyway. Let's the rule of law, right, guys? So let's just get rid of all of it. Like we could start there, have the heavy debate, and come with a conclusion that I think everyone would agree with, and that's just get rid of tax.
This is what I love about conservative talk shows just in general. I feel like I threw out a really red, meaty piece of just, hey, less income tax for families. We all love that. And still, we have people who are on our side of the aisle saying, yeah, but there's a lot of things to think about. So, regardless where you stand on this, I really appreciate the inclusivity that we have here on the conservative side of the aisle.